I'm going to talk about retail and organisational transformation, and specifically when I talk about transformation, I'm talking about human behaviours. So digital transformation is not the use of technology, but it's the changing of human behaviours in a digital world. And I'm going to talk about leadership, customers and products. So first of all, we've seen retail and many organisations being attacked in recent years. And centralised organisations, when they're attacked, they tend to become more centralised. So whether that's just by the digital players or by COVID itself, we're seeing organisations become more and more centralised. And when we look at this in terms of leadership, we're seeing a change of discourse. Now, in this slide here, I've got 4 different discourses of leadership that's happened throughout the years. Way back in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, we had the idea of a leader as a controller. It was focusing on maximizing efficiency and control to achieve output. We then had the idea of leadership as a therapist, motivation, and human relations. The leadership as a messiah, the idea that you have strong cultures and loyal employees. And today we're really seeing the idea of the leader as an ecosystem, the rise of social purpose, participation and connection. And what we're finding in these leadership discourses is as the world digitally transforms, we're seeing the return of the controller discourse. These digital technologies are making organizations more centralized. They're controlling workers in a way that they were controlled 100 years ago. And so you're seeing the return of the controller discourse and the rise of the eco-leadership discourse. So you've got connectivity and ethics, and this frames the retail challenge. On one hand, you have all of these technologies, which allows you to control your interactions with the customer. And on the other hand, you've got lots of companies that you're competing against that are decentralized and using connectivity and ethics and interactions and interdependencies between people to sell to you. The organizations that do this, so the organizations that have distributed leadership activities within their teams, outperform the average by 756%. This is an incredibly amazing number to see that distributed teamwork where leadership activities happen, you're massively ahead of what your competitors are doing. So have a quick look at what that looks like. So 3 things happen in these eco-leadership team activities. First of all, what happens in the team is there's the building of safety. These are people in the team where they will have regular interpersonal interactions, regular eye contact, and fast-moving conversations. So your retail team has to be able to have these kind of conversations in order to do the job. They share vulnerability. So they have to have a freedom to ask questions, admit mistakes, offer ideas, and challenge the status quo. And I'll show you what this looks like on the next slide. And finally, they have to establish ethical purpose. They strive to serve the needs of the customer and the organization simultaneously. So they're looking to strive to share the shareholder in terms of the customer and in terms of the organization. So all of the stakeholders get served. So to go back to the share vulnerability, this is a wonderful story of how Zara managed to sell some pink scarves. A number of years ago, pink scarves became fashionable. And employees around the world working for Zara all found that people were coming into the Zara stores and saying, I would like a pink scarf. They didn't have any pink scarves in their catalog. None of the stores were selling it. But because the people at Zara and the frontline staff felt able to talk upwards, they weren't being controlled, they had a voice, they could offer ideas, they could ask some questions up through the system. They talked to senior management and said, look, we're hearing these stories, people want pink scarves. And because Zara has an incredible supply chain and industrial manufacturing base, they made pink scarves very quickly. And they were within the store within about 2 days. And they sold out within another 3 days. So from a member of the store who had totally frontline, no power, a number of them said the same thing up through the system. The digital technologies allowed this to get into senior management, and they were able to sell scarves that they didn't previously have throughout the world and make a lot of money and make the customers much more loyal to the brand because they were responding to their needs. So this is what distributed work looks like. This is what ecosystem leadership looks like. It's the ability to have conversations through a platform. I look at customers themselves through the lenses of choice and trust. Now, what we know about choice is that learning to choose is hard. Learning to choose well is even harder. And learning to choose well in a world of unlimited possibilities is harder still, perhaps too hard. This is a quote from Barry Schwartz and the paradox of choice. So what you have to look at is your consumers walking into either the digital realm or the bricks and mortar realm and looking at all the choices they've got to buy and then being able to sell something to them. It's an incredibly difficult thing for them to do. One of the things Barry Schwartz talks about is the jam jar test. When a customer walks to a stall with multiple jam jars, so 30 plus jam jars, and can taste all 30, they hardly ever buy one. When they can only taste 6, about 30% of the customers buy it. So this is a 10% increase from the average. The average is that if it was 30, you would only have 3% buying. If you had 6, you would have 30% buying. So reducing choice quickly is an incredibly important sales technique that you can do within your ecosystem, within your digital and your bricks and mortar. People experience choice overload, and you've got to quickly get through that. So people, when they want to make a quick and easy choice, they struggle to make it. When making the right choice, I'm choosing the right piece of technology, I'm choosing the thing that really matters. When it's difficult to compare, and when they're unclear about their preferences. So a distributed ecosystem leadership solution will help the customers make these choices quickly. And I'll try and show you what that looks like. So the most famous example is Apple. When Steve Jobs took over at Apple, they had a multiple, for the second time this is, they had a multiple number of products. The technological differences between the projects were huge. So you had a huge number of laptops and a huge number of desktops. And the customers had no idea about the difference unless they were highly technically skilled. So Jobs very quickly reduced the choice into 2 laptops and 2 desktops. And the result is history. The same thing within selling food. You've seen Aldi and Costco reduce the number of choices that customers have and have the staff know in detail what these choices are. So they can explain to the customer in detail why they should choose that, what it's comparing with. You get past choice overload. Costco does exactly the same thing. So that relationship with the customer where you're explaining to them, you're reducing the number of choices to a small number, and you're telling them how to choose between the two. This is a really important way and a really efficacious way to get customers to buy rapidly. Part of getting them through choice is the building of trust, and we've already heard about trust in the previous talk. So trust is the currency of interaction as money is the currency of transaction. This is from Rachel Botsman, Who Can You Trust? So how do you quickly build the trust with the customers, given all of this choice it causes action paralysis and anxiety? So there are 3 ways we trust. Firstly, there's fragile trust. So our trust disappears when there's one mistake or seemingly self-interested activity. So as soon as you see that, you stop trusting the brand, you stop trusting the company, and you do not buy anything with them anymore. A robust trust means that the trust in the person, the product, and the institution is innate, and it takes a lot of trust failures to break. So it would take a lot of bad behaviors to break that trust. And perhaps more importantly, we've got the idea of anti-fragile trust. Our trust will grow because we feel safe, can share vulnerabilities, and establish purpose. So it's the same showing of vulnerability that the eco-leadership system talks about. This is important to realize. Our trust in institutions is extremely fragile at the moment. It's at an all-time low in many developed economies. So people innately are not trusting you, and it's very easy to break the trust relationship and to lose consumers and customers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what trust looks like in practice. So this is the Sydney Visitor Centre in Sydney. You go in there and you can buy tourist activities. For them to actually make money, you have to buy it in the store. You can easily take a brochure away and take it home, and they don't make any commission. So for the management, it trusts its employees if they deliver results consistently over time and they regularly illustrate their capabilities. So the work we did with the visitor centre is the blue dot there. Whoever worked in that spot kept on delivering. That is because everything got channeled into that spot. Whoever walked into that store walked to that counter. Whoever stood to that counter kept on making the best sales. So the most senior staff just stood there. If you were listening to those people, you would not be able to solve any of your complex problems about selling because not everybody could sit there. The customer trust is different. Customer trust retail employees if they're empathetic to the customer's feelings and if they show integrity in their advice and the help they give. Now, that kind of trust happened in a different place. It happens where this blue spot is. This is where the customers were shuffling through brochures, trying to decide how to spend their hard-earned holiday money. They hadn't already made a decision to walk to the counter. They were still trying to work through the number of choices. And there was the opportunity there for the staff to go and start talking and try and converting interest into sales. Unfortunately, because the data being fed back to the company was that the best-selling people, the best-selling staff were the ones that stood still, that was not being activated properly. Reactivating it properly and getting people to start trusting what the staff was saying increased sales dramatically. So you can do this both in offline and online realms, but it's very, very important to understand that trusting your staff, how management trusts their staff and how customers trust the same people is very different. You need to make trust a core design requirement. So thirdly, we look about products and good and emergent practice. A key quote from Seth Godin is, "Do not find customers for your products, find products for your customers." This is an important skill for your people to have. So there's an overview of practice. These are the things that your people can do. So first of all, there's the idea of best practice. Do A, get B. It works the same time. It doesn't matter who comes in, you're going to get the same result. Good practice means sensing the problem with expertise. Once sensed, solve appropriately, and I'll show you what that looks like. An emergent practice is to probe the environment and experiment with possible solutions. Find out what your customers are really after, find out what their needs really are, and use some different techniques to actually start selling to them. So this is an example of good practice. So to go back to the Australian Visitor Centre. If you had a family like this come in and stand there, you're pretty certain that they're going to want to go and have some kind of trip into the bush around Australia, into the Blue Mountains. So you just find out how long they're in Sydney. They tell you how long they're in Sydney, and you're looking to sell them a Blue Mountains holiday because it's the most popular destination in Sydney. And then you go back to the choice element. There are multiple companies selling Blue Mountains tours, hundreds and hundreds. So action paralysis takes place. They're overwhelmed by the number of choices they have. So you break it down into the number of things that they can do in the Blue Mountains. They can do 6 different things. They can go on a cable car, they can have a bushwalk, they can have a river cruise, they can go to an animal sanctuary, they can have lunch, and they can have the bus ride out there. So you've got the 6 different things that they can do. And once you've broken down 40 to 50 different choices down to 6, they will buy something because they're beginning to have a control of their choice again. However, not everything is quite that easy. So this is a quote from Town France from Queer Eye. "I couldn't give a shit about fashion. Style is dressing the way that you feel confident and what is appropriate for you, your age, and your body type." So this is emergent practice. It's very easy if you're an expert in a field to say, right, this suits you, this is the kind of thing you should buy. When you don't know anything about the person, when they've come in and you're first talking to them, whether it's online or offline, and you're trying to work out what their desires are, how do you do that? We've already looked in the previous talks at the idea that we're not numbers, that we are free people. And Queer Eye is a wonderful show to watch for you to understand how this happens. So Tan France has a very, very specific method when he's trying to dress people who do not know how to dress. First of all, he asks them, the customer themselves, what part of your body do you like and dislike? We're going to emphasize one and we will disguise the other. So you're creating empathy with them. This is what you like, what don't you like? That empathetic response or that empathetic understanding of where they're comfortable and where they're not comfortable is incredibly important. Secondly, the vision. Most people will have style icons or people they want to emulate. So he then asks, which famous person's style do you admire and why? So not only is he now trying to help them look good, he's trying to help them look good in a way that they've already identified. And then the appropriateness. So he tries to make sure that they're dressing appropriately to them, the types of clothes appropriate to their age and to their complexion. Don't buy stuff that makes you look flushed. Don't buy stuff that that doesn't suit your age range. So he's looking constantly around empathy, but he's also using his expertise to help the person. And here's a couple of examples. So within the season 3, there was a 49-year-old farmer in prison guard. So she looked like she did on the left when he first came across her. She loved to hunt and wear camouflage, but she felt very, very uncomfortable in formal settings. She didn't know how to be sophisticated. She didn't know how to behave and how to dress for sophisticated environments. And she wanted to have a romantic wedding anniversary. So he probed her desires with those set of questions, and she went from how she looked on the left to how she looked on the right within a week. I think it's within 4 days. A second example. On the left, a divorced man who'd recently taken the job as a program director at a children's camp. Didn't know how to dress, needed to get some leadership responsibilities, needed to show that he was in charge, and he was dressing too much like the children. He also was somewhat unbonded with his young son. He needed the grooming and presentation techniques that would suit his role and responsibilities. Again, a similar set of probing questions, and he ended up looking like he did in the right. So in conclusion to everything I've said, there are 3 things that you need to do when looking at the people side of digital transformation, organizational transformation. Firstly, the eco-leadership. Frontline retail staff, when given leadership responsibilities, can be your most valuable sense makers. They can find your next Zara pink scarf. Choice and trust. Training them to help the customers navigate a complex array of choices by making them feel you care that they make the right choice for them, not for you. And then make sure you understand the difference between good and emergent sales practice. How can you make quick sales versus how do you do the probing, slower sales that help you create new customers and the trust levels that perhaps you wouldn't have done previously. Thank you very much.